On 27th October, Ding Mao year of the Chinese calendar, in the 6th year of the Tongzhi reign, the equivalent of 22nd November 1867, according to the Gregorian calendar, Prince Gong Yixing of the Tsungli Yamen sent a letter to the embassies of the treaty nations, informing them that the former United States minister Anson Burlingame had been appointed by the imperial court to be the first Chinese envoy to the treaty nations. The Qing court had never appointed an envoy before. The Tsungli Yamen, known as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in modern terminology, was only established on 1st February in the 11th year of the Xianfeng reign, the equivalent of 11th March 1861 of the Gregorian calendar. It originated from China's defeat in the Second Opium War in the 8th year of the Xianfeng reign, 1858, concluded with the signing of the Treaty of Tianjin. In the treaty, it was stipulated that Britain and France were entitled to set up embassies in Peking. By September, the 10th year of the Xianfeng reign, October 1860 of the Gregorian calendar, British and French forces sacked Peking. The Convention of Peking was signed separately between China and Britain, China and France, China and Russia. The Qing government was coerced to implement the treaties. Tsungli Yamen was established in the aftermath. In the 88th year of the Republic, 1999, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of China also applied the date of 11th March, the founding of the Tsungli Yamen, to be the anniversary date of the ministry. The appointment of Anson Burlingame as envoy of China was intended to establish an embassy in Washington on his return, to visit European treaty nations and non-treaty nations afterwards, as to explain the difficulties and position of China to the heads of these nations. To be appointed envoy to such a group of nations was akin to a minister to both the United States and Europe, an unprecedented and unrepeatable position. In a few years, the appointments of ministers became an established custom in the foreign dealings of the Qing court. Why was it difficult to find a suitable envoy out of the 400 million Chinese in the Qing dynasty, while instead an American, Anson Burlingame, was particularly favored? In the 6th year of the Tongzhi reign, 1867, gazing across the empire, no one in the scholar official class was knowledgeable in Western language, for foreign language was not part of the syllabus in public examination. As virtuous and capable as Guo Songtao, 1818 to 1891, when he was appointed minister to Britain in the first year of the Guangxu reign, 1878, he was handicapped by foreign language and relied on the English secretary at the embassy, Sir Halliday Macartney, for external translations. By the 4th year of the Guangxu reign, 1878, when Zheng Jizhe, 1839 to 1890, was appointed minister to Britain and France, he was already acquainted with English, but not in a position of fluency. Tongwen College was established in Peking to train and provide translators for diplomatic service during the reign of Qianlong Emperor. Russian was taught at the time. By the reigns of Daoguang and Xianfeng emperors, there was hardly any student left. It existed in name only. In the first year of the Tongzhi reign, 1862, Tongwen College began to teach English, and in the following year, it added classes in French and Russian. To start education courses in haste could hardly resolve pressing needs. Besides, the translators from Tongwen College could not be made into suitable candidates for ministers immediately. They were incomparable to the metropolitan graduates of Jingsi in learnings and discernments, who also accumulated wide experiences in officialdom. Putting aside the language barrier, it was important to possess insights into Western nations. In the sixth year of the Tongzhi reign, 1867, searching the four seas for someone in the scholar official class familiar with the politics, society, and people of Western nations was remote and unattainable. The pioneer of Western education, Yong Wing, 1828 to 1912, returned to China in the fifth year of the Xianfeng reign, 1855, almost the only American university graduate in the whole country. At the end of the second year of the Tongzhi reign, 1863, he was recommended to Fan, 1811 to 1872, and assigned to purchase machinery from America for the Jiangnan arsenal. The distinguished diplomats familiar with Western nations who came after, such as Wu Tingfang, was born in the 22nd year of the Daoguang reign, 1842. Xu Jingchen was born in the 25th year of the Daoguang reign, 1845. Chen Jitong was born in the first year of the Xianfeng reign, 1851. They were all talented men from another generation. Anson Burlingame, 1820 to 1870, was born in New York, citizen of the United States. His father, Joel, was a devout Methodist and school teacher. In 1841, he graduated from the Branch University of Michigan, and in 1846, he graduated from Harvard Law School. He practiced law in Massachusetts, and between 1853 to 1854, he was member of the Massachusetts State Senate. From 1855 to 1861, he was elected to 3 terms as congressman of the House of Representatives. He was best known for his anti-slavery position and an ally of President Abraham Lincoln. He failed in his re-election bid in 1860, and as consolation prize, President Lincoln appointed him minister to Austria in 1861. However, because of his previous support of Kossuth and Sardinian independence, the Austrian court objected to his appointment. On 14th June 1861, he was then appointed minister to China. In October, Burlingame arrived at the American legation in Macau. The only access to Peking was by river, and the Beihe River was frozen through winter. Not until 20th July 1862 did he finally reach Peking. Before his appointment to China, Burlingame was already a well-known political figure in America. His friendship with President Lincoln, in both official and private capacity, was not peripheral. When President Lincoln was assassinated on 15 April 1865, Burlingame was of course sorrowful. There is a copy of the Memorial of President Lincoln signed by Anson Burlingame in my collection. It is a testimony to the relationship that initiated Burlingame's mission to China. In the 6 years as minister to China, Burlingame frequently acted to safeguard the rights and interests of China. His thoughts were clarified and presented in the 20th June 1863 letter to William H. Seward, Secretary of State, it partially reads, "In dispatch number 18 of June 2nd, 1862, I had the honor to write, if the treaty powers could agree among themselves to the neutrality of China and together secure order in the treaty ports and give their moral support to that party in China in favor of order, the interests of humanity would be subserved." Upon my arrival at Peking, I at once elaborated my views and found, upon comparing them with those held by the representatives of England and Russia, that they were in accord with theirs. After mature deliberation, we determined to consult and cooperate upon all questions. The policy upon which we are agreed is briefly this, that while we claim our treaty right to buy and sell and hire in the treaty ports, subject in respect to our rights of property and person to the jurisdiction of our own governments, we will not ask for, nor take concessions of, territory in the treaty ports, or in any way interfere with the jurisdiction of the Chinese government over its own people, nor ever menace the territorial integrity of the Chinese Empire. At a time when the powers were pillaging land and extorting compensations, the high-minded position of Burlingame was like a cold delivery in snow. The Qing court was surprisingly taken with heartfelt appreciation. In November 1867, after 2 terms as minister to China, Burlingame was prepared to return. Tsungli Yamen propositioned him to become China's envoy. According to contemporary description, Burlingame was modest and sincere, a most courteous man, possessing an outlook that cemented easy friendship with the Chinese scholar officials. The American missionary and scholar W.A.P. Martin wrote a cycle of Cathay, which was published in 1896. There is a detailed description. Mr. Burlingame, having filled 2 terms as minister, was about to return to the United States to resume his place in the political movements of the day. Packed for the voyage, he called at the Yamen to take leave of Prince Gong and his colleagues, the prince inviting me to act as interpreter. After professions of regret, which were profuse and sincere on both sides, Mr. Burlingame offered to serve them by correcting misapprehensions. "There is a great deal to be done in that line," said the prince. "Are you going through Europe?" Mr. Burlingame answering in the affirmative, the prince requested his good offices at the courts of Paris and London, especially the latter. Wen Xiang, always the chief spokesman, enlarged on the nature of the representations to be made, and added, "In short, you will be our minister." "If it were possible," interposed the prince, "for one minister to serve 2 countries, we should be glad to have you for our envoy." This remark, uttered half in jest, was the germ of the Burlingame mission. It struck Burlingame as opening a pleasing vista of possibilities. To a temperament like his, the prospect of being the first to introduce the old empire of the East to the courts of the Western world was irresistibly fascinating. It might delay, but might it not help his political career? In late November 1867, Burlingame arrived at Tianjin, and from there traveled onwards to Shanghai to collect members of the mission. Those in the mission were Zigang, Reserve Customs Circuit, Sun Jia Ge, Bureau Director of the Ministry of Rights, John McLevy Brown, British First Secretary, Emile Deschamps, French Second Secretary, De Zaichu, Da Muan, Ting Fuchen, Kang Yanrong, Feng Huizhou, Lian Chunqing, Gui Dongqing, Zhuang Songru, etc. Burlingame stayed in Shanghai for nearly a month. Together with members of the mission, they boarded a vessel to America. After 1 month's voyage, in April 1868, they arrived at San Francisco. This is the portrait of the mission. And Burlingame is in the middle. While in Shanghai, Burlingame wrote to William H. Seward, Secretary of State. It partially reads, "You will have learned from my telegram from Peking of my appointment by the Chinese government as envoy to the treaty powers, and of my acceptance of the same. The facts in relation to the appointment are as follows. I was on the point of proceeding to the treaty ports of China to ascertain what changes our citizens desire to have made in the treaties, provided a revision should be determined upon, which it was my intention to resign and go home. The knowledge of this intention coming to the Chinese, Prince Gong gave a farewell dinner at which great regret was expressed at my resolution to leave China, and urgent requests made that I would, like Sir Frederick Bruce, state China's difficulties and inform the treaty powers of their sincere desire to be friendly and progressive. This I cheerfully promised to do. During the conversation, Wen Xiang, a leading man of the empire, said, 'Why will you not represent us officially?' I repulsed the suggestion playfully, and the conversation passed to other topics. Subsequently, I was informed that the Chinese were most serious, and a request was made through Mr. Brown, Chinese Secretary of the British Legation, that I should delay my departure for a few days until a proposition could be submitted to me. I had no further conversation with them until the proposition was made in form, requesting me to act for them as ambassador to all the treaty ports. I had in the interim thought anxiously about the subject, and after consultation with my friends, determined, in the interests of our country and civilization, to accept. Burlingame was a polished orator. After returning to America, he was able to employ his talent of public speaking in many states, advancing the cause of Chinese diplomacy. On 6 June 1868, the Chinese mission was received by President Andrew Johnson at the White House. On 28 July, Burlingame on behalf of China and William H. Seward on behalf of the United States signed the additional articles to the treaty between China and the United States of the 18th of June 1858. This treaty is also known as Burlingame-Seward Treaty or Burlingame Treaty, as evidence of his great contribution to this equal treaty. The treaty between China and the United States of the 18th of June 1858 referred to the Treaty of Tianjin, the unequal treaty signed after China's defeat in the Second Opium War. The additional articles were remedial measures ratified in Peking on 23 November 1869. The principles of the additional articles were: 1. Emphasis on China's territory and jurisdiction, that they should not be interfered. 2. Recognized China's control over trade and navigation. 3. Recognized China's right to appoint consuls to American ports. 4. Ensured religious freedom in the two countries. 5. Ensured unrestricted migration between the two countries. 6. Ensured the rights of travel and residence in the two countries. 7. Ensured the right to open schools for own citizens in other country. 8. Ensured the right of China's emperor to govern without interference. This treaty is now in the collection of the National Palace Museum, Republic of China. In the 100th year of the Republic, 2011, Ambassador Lyu-shun and Director Ming Zhu edited and compiled the catalogue for A Century of Resilient Tradition, exhibition of the Republic of China's diplomatic archives. The Burlingame Treaty is illustrated on page 30. In October 1868, the Chinese mission arrived in London. On 20th November, the mission was received by Queen Victoria. In January 1869, the mission reached Paris and stayed till September. In my modest collection, there is a letter by Burlingame, dated 20th March from Paris. It reads, Paris, March 20th, 1869. My dear friend, permit me to recall myself once more to your warm friendship. Our old friend Hall is in trouble with his lordship at Madrid. Can anything be done for him? Do try, for it will be the end if our old mate slavery chief should come to grief through any misadventures. What do you propose? Can you not come to Europe once more? Switzerland is vacant, is it not? Or Belgium? I am working myself to death. It's the same old fight with 400 millions in the place of 4. I hope I have secured for China fair play from the nations of the West. England has left the old Palmerstonian policy and has met my wishes most fully. The other nations will do the same. I sometimes think that I shall not live through this mission. The stress is too great upon me. The world only sees the splendid side. I see the work and feel the pain and anxiety. What Dead Sea fruit all these honors are, and though sought by all, they are enjoyed by none. Keep me in your grand old loving heart, and believe me sincerely yours, Anson Burlingame. A man from another race who willingly, for the well-being of 400 million Chinese, persisted to life's last stretch. In the letter, Burlingame wrote, I sometimes think that I shall not live through this mission. It was indeed a sad prophecy. The Chinese mission continued onwards to Sweden, Denmark, Holland, Germany, and Russia. On 16th February 1870, the mission was received by Tsar Alexander II. February in St. Petersburg was particularly cold. 1 week later, on 23rd, Burlingame died of pneumonia. Accumulative fatigue and apprehensions over China's affairs, Burlingame passed away in the line of duty. If this tragedy did not befall, perhaps China could have successfully exploited a diplomatic path in dealing with the foreign powers. I shall finally share 3 books that relate to Anson Burlingame. Defense of Massachusetts, Speech of Honorable Anson Burlingame of Massachusetts, June 21st, 1856. This is perhaps the best-known speech by Burlingame when he was a congressman, supporting the anti-slavery platform of the North and his friend Senator Charles Sumner, who was gravely assaulted by the Southern Congressman Preston Brooks. This special copy was owned and signed by Senator Henry Wilson, political ally of both Sumner and Burlingame. On 3rd March 1870, a memorial was held by the Chamber of Commerce of the State of New York. The eulogy was given by Elliot C. Cowden, an old friend of Burlingame, and printed into a booklet. The eulogy was an affectionate portrait of the character of Burlingame. When Anson Burlingame was minister to China, his son, Edward Livermore Burlingame, 1848 to 1922, was his private secretary. After returning to America, he worked as editor of newspaper and magazine. In April 1913, Edward inscribed the only biography of his father, Anson Burlingame, and the first Chinese mission to foreign powers, as a gift to his younger cousin, Emma Burlingame. The author is Frederick Wells Williams, 1857 to 1928, American sinologist, son of Samuel Wells Williams, 1812 to 1884, also a famous sinologist. When Burlingame was minister to China between the years 1861 and 1867, Samuel Wells Williams was the chargé d'affaires in Peking. Frederick and Edward must be well acquainted with each other. Burlingame is far away in history, but an association piece of paper or an association copy of a book is ample to summon the past for reflection.